spicefm.co.ke. It's also live streaming on social media, Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We are on terrestrial 94.4 Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, Kisumu 102.5, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, in Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7 countrywide, and also now for the next 1 hour as well, we are still on KTN Home. In this hour, let's talk about the plight of tenants and the plight of landlords. We have seen a lot of data that's coming from various polling companies and also coming from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics that's showing that very many people are now increasingly unable to pay rent. That is meeting the basic need of housing. Very many people are unable to pay rent, and the numbers keep increasing. The number that were unable to pay rent in May was higher than the number of people who were unable to pay rent in April. And many of the tenants are saying, well, we try talking to our landlords, and our landlords are just telling us, look, there's no reprieve that I can offer. There are few landlords who've given reprieve to their tenants, but many have not passed on any reprieve to their tenants. Landlords as well have been complaining and saying, we also would like some sort of reprieve. And in terms of, we have loans to pay, we've got taxes to pay, and all that. So let's have that conversation. And now we're joined by somebody who is the Secretary General of the Landlords and Tenants Association. Those two are in the same association. Ben Liyai, good morning.
Good morning.
How is that possible that those two are in the same association?
Basically, for landlords and tenants, it's basically like water and, let me say, oil, exactly. And the reason why we came up with making sure that at least we bring together landlords and tenants is because number one, these people, even though they have different objectives, but they have to relate with one another. Reason being that for a tenant, is looking for a basic need, which is shelter. But then for the landlord, is in business, is invested. So basically, these are two different divergent objectives, but at the same time, they have to relate. And this one causes a lot of conflicts in between the two, the landlord and the tenant. And with us, thought that at least it will be good if we can offer a platform whereby at least we are able to make both of them understand laws, because the law that govern the tenants and the landlord. And then we can enlighten them on the laws, and eventually they can be able to live in harmony. Yes.
It seems like it's not very harmonized at the moment. There seems to be a lot going on. We know that COVID has brought quite a lot of these issues out. Yeah. And a lot more people, like Eric said, are unable to pay their rent. A lot of people are being kicked out of their homes, or being, in some cases, locked in because they're unable to pay rent. It's an impasse. How is this going to be sorted out?
Okay, it's unfortunate that we get ourselves in this kind of a situation. Remember, that is on 1st of April, as an association, we came out and said that the tenants should not pay rent, simply because the future was uncertain. We didn't know exactly what's going to happen, and people are losing jobs. People are going for unpaid leave. And so you ask yourself, are you going to pay for your rent, and you don't know how you're going to survive in the next moving forward? Then by then we are trying to force the government to come in and maybe probably give some kind of relief to the tenants. Some of the things that we pushed, maybe let me just say 10% was basically taken into consideration. For instance, we said that most landlords are paying their loans. They're servicing their loans. So the government should come out and maybe give a moratorium to those who are paying loans, so that at least they're not able, they don't get into difficulty in terms of servicing their loans. And true to that, at least the government came in out through central bank. They said if you have a loan, you can actually visit your financial institution. So to some extent, that one gave us some kind of reprieve. But again, even our clarion call also made some landlords to actually do a waiver. Like maybe 2 months, 3 months, and even some landlords went in and gave a discount on rent. So to some extent, again, that one also cushioned quite a number of tenants across. So now, at this kind of situation, again, the only thing we can only say is that it's for both landlords and tenants to come and sit down and see, this is a problem that we have. How do we mitigate this kind of a situation?
And what's the role of the association in that?
Now, the role of association is basically to create awareness, because we've realized for a long time people don't understand the laws. Like, I'll give you an example. For instance, for the landlord, a landlord would feel that if a tenant moves out of my premises without paying any kind of, paying rent, then I'm not going to get that money. So you find that they come up with some stringent measures that would actually make the whole thing look like there's no decorum in terms of yes, the relationship. So they use through the agents they'll use some kind of force, and we've even had some landlords using goons maybe to evict tenants out of there.
There was a
houses.
case reported in Nakuru just the other day, was it Monday?
Yeah.
About a woman and her child who were welded into the house.
You're locked in.
Yes, such kind of things do happen. But then again, you realize the people who make this industry to be, to be in a sham is, let me say, the agents, because the agents want to get their commission. And on the same side, at the same time, the landlords, they also want their money. So you realize that instead of going through the laws, using the laws that are there, of which most people don't know. So as an association, our work is just to make people understand that, hey, we have laws that govern landlords and tenants, of which most people don't know.
Okay, I want to bring you back to my question. My question was actually in relation to what is happening currently.
Yes.
Where landlords and tenants, you said, need to have a conversation so that they can move forward.
Yes.
What is the role of the association in facilitating this conversation? Do you need to have all the landlords, like the representatives of landlords sitting in one room and representatives of tenants, so they can speak with one voice and say, this is what, as as landlords, we are extending a 10% to 5% discount to all our tenants, irrespective of how much the 5% translates to. And then this is our commitment as tenants as well.
Okay, basically, it will not be easy to bring together all the tenants, and all the landlords, maybe, for example, to get a solution way forward. But as an association, what we are planning to do is basically partner with different type of organizations, so that at least we can create some kind of awareness for what is happening. Because you realize, even for the landlords, that we have landlords in different categories. Like, we have those who have structural structures within Nairobi. We have those who have they target, let me say, the middle class. And of course, we have the high end and all that. So basically, these are wide. It's a wide area that, of course, you cannot bring all of them together. And again, you also realize again, some of them, of course, they've taken loans to put up the houses. So there's no way they'll come in giving out discounts or maybe waivers. And others, of course, that was part of the retirement benefits that they put into the housing sector. For them, some of them maybe might actually agree to giving out waivers. So basically, here the most important thing is basically the awareness that we have to create, so that landlords have to understand that, one, you cannot evict a tenant just anyhowly, and of course without a court order. And again, for the tenants have to know that it is their responsibility to do what? To pay the rent. So now you see, the problem we have is that when a tenant, just like we said, oil and water, when a tenant is unable to pay rent, instead of approaching the landlord, they keep off. And that's where we come in. So we offer that opportunity for them, at least for us to talk to the landlord, on their behalf, so that the landlord can be able to understand, look, if this guy moves out, then whatever that he's supposed to pay, let the association help you to get that money.
And are you getting, are you getting people who would be in that position, and you're actually doing something and then seeing that this has borne some kind of fruit, negotiating on someone's behalf, for example? Are there many, around the country then who can get that kind of relief?
Exactly. Okay, we've actually helped quite a number of let me say landlords and tenants who get themselves in these kind of situations. And one thing that we come to understand, that when the third party comes in between the landlord and tenant, in most cases landlords tend to understand But then they tend to understand because there's someone else talking on behalf of, of the tenant. But in a situation whereby both of them are supposed to talk, then that's where we get conflicts coming in. But majority of the landlords, they definitely they listen. And again, that's why you see, like, the only thing that the government came out to do was to request the landlords to dialogue. Because to some extent, in some areas, it has actually worked. It's only a few areas whereby we have maybe rogue agents and landlords who've they go against the will, and of course they want to do take law, maybe, let me say, in their hands.
Well, Liyai, what is the structural organization of this association in terms of membership and the cross-section of your membership? How many landlords do you have as members? How many tenants do you have as members? How are they organized? What is the organization in terms of leadership? How does it look like? And what's the representation of each of these?
Okay, basically, the association, it's registered under the Societies Act, whereby the leadership is actually, it just takes the normal structure of the chairman, Secretary General, and other officials within a society, just as stipulated in Act 108. But then when it comes to members in terms of landlords and and tenants across the country, we're talking of about 16,000 at the moment, 16,000 tenants and about 10,000 landlords. Those are the ones that we have in our data. And basically, more in terms of structural communication and all that, we basically do, let me say, through mails and phones and all that, to maybe to pass over the message and get to understand what happened. Like, for instance, when we got ourselves into the COVID-19 situation, it's actually the tenants who forced us, like, hey, what are you guys doing now? We get ourselves in this kind of a situation. So are you going to do something? Are you going to come out and maybe probably protect us? Because now, look, we're going for unpaid leave and we don't know exactly what to do. Can you talk to the landlords so that they can be able to do something? But then we decided to come out, first of all, and give a solution that should basically, actually, to some extent, come from the government also. But now the government kept off.
How did you arrive at this solution? So I'm looking at this, what you've said, 16,000 tenants are your members, 10,000 landlords are your members, and we've gotten into COVID from 13th of March. We have COVID. By the end of April, we already had people who had lost their incomes and were not able to pay. And landlords, tenants are already reaching out to you and saying, we'd like some solution. Did you have a meeting? Did you bring a meeting of the leadership? And is the leadership well representative of these particular two organizations, two groupings of people?
Basically, we didn't have a meeting, that one I may say, because again, at the end of the day, the objective of the association is just to make sure that its members are well represented and covered. And at times it gets to a situation whereby you have to come out and maybe probably show leadership and maybe give direction to what exactly is supposed to happen. Remember, as this happened and the government came with directives, like talk of social distancing and such kind of stuff, whereby you will not be able even to call for a meeting of, let me say, some landlords and maybe come up with a decision on that. So basically, this was an abrupt decision that we had to come up and see how we can be able to cushion the tenants. But again, at the same time, making sure that, again, our landlords do not feel like we are really, we are not taking care of their interest. So it was really a situation that we couldn't, maybe by that particular point in time, let me say, call people together and say, now, this is the solution that we have to. But again, we still had that responsibility of making sure that at least we do something, because this was a matter that was touching the organization for the first time ever.
So you came out and said, we'd like to advise our landlords not to ask for demand rent from their tenants.
Yes.
And yet you had not spoken to your membership, which includes landlords, for them to have the buy-in and agree that this is what we are going with.
Yes.
What kind of pushback did you get from your members, the 10,000 landlord members?
Basically,
what was the response?
Basically, of course, we didn't get some good response from some of especially landlords, because I remember part of our landlords around Dagoretti area and Kawangware, they actually came out and did a presser, and they said they do not agree to that. But again, at the same time, quite a number of landlords came out and actually heed our call and they went ahead and even gave the discounts and maybe the waiver. So it's something that basically got ourselves unprepared, but at least I'd say the way we handled it and what we are seeing within the industry at the moment, as much as we're having people who are being evicted out of their houses illegally, but at least to some extent we had we actually got what we needed.
Do you have
And
a
this-
role?
sorry,
Go ahead, Siti.
No, please.
Do you have a role to lobby the government?
Exactly. Now, this is another situation. Now, basically, the tenancy, when it comes to, let me say, matters to do with tenancy in the country, I think we are far much behind compared to other countries, maybe in Europe and all that, because it's only here that, let me say, a tenant will not even give you back your deposit, for instance.
The landlord.
Yes, the landlord. And again, at the same time, people do not understand the laws. You know, we have the laws that govern the tenants, Cap 296, and of course the ones, and of course for business also 301. And all these laws, they give us a guideline on how we are supposed to operate. Now, unfortunately, people in the industry do not understand that. Even some agents, they do not understand that we have laws that, of course, govern the operation. For instance, when you go to the Ministry of Housing, we have a department that is supposed to register all the agents, but only 10% have registered, which means the rest of 90%, they just
Let me
into
just
that
stop you
business.
here, Ben, because I think you're still going back into what the dream of the association was, and we are asking practical questions. Yeah,
Yes.
we have people who are unable to pay rent. We have people who are not getting an income as landlords, and you have an association, and this association has come out to say that we represent landlords and tenants. My question was, have you had any meeting with government to lobby on behalf of your members that we'd like this kind of support?
Okay, in terms of lobbying, the first time when we came out on this particular issue, remember, Senator Sakaja took up the mantle, and because he came up with a bill that was supposed to basically somehow cushion the tenants. But we see that bill never saw the end of the day, because that was part of it. Because we actually met him and we said, now we have a solution. And I think the only solution that we have is that before the COVID-19 bill comes into into an act, at least they should consider the tenants and the landlords. And for sure, the issue of landlords and tenants was part of what was supposed to be discussed. But unfortunately, it never saw the end of the day. Now, the only other part that we are left with is basically, let me say, to continue lobbying now, maybe probably through our members, and maybe have
How
that
exactly
unity of
do you
purpose.
lobby?
Yeah. Now, of course, now moving forward, despite the directives that we have at the moment in terms of now people cannot be able to meet and all that, so it becomes
But
really
lobbying
a problem.
doesn't necessarily require you to meet.
Yes, of course I understand, but again, one of the experience that we've had, especially trying to push this even through, let me say the legislative arm, is that we have vested interests in this kind of administration, whereby some of the people we've even approached to lobby, especially from the parliament side and all that, they kind of get a bit of cold when you talk about now representing the issues of tenants and landlords.
Why?
And
Why would that
the
be?
reason is the reason is that for instance, I think majority of people who are in leadership at the same time are the people who own these properties.
So
And,
they should be your members as landlords.
Yes, exactly. But again, and when you try to push the narrative of like, okay, because like what has made us to move into this is because of tenants are not able to pay their rent. So that becomes one of the major point why we are pushing for such.
How old
And
is
it has
this
always-
organization of yours?
Since 2013.
Since 2013?
Yes.
Long before COVID?
Yes.
Now, if you've been in existence since 2013, what sort of structure or mechanism do you have for conflict resolution?
Okay, within our organization, we have what we call ADR, alternative dispute resolution. You know, with ADR, at least you're able to get justice within a very short period of time. And what we've been looking at is for the tenants, for the landlords who are members, we encourage them that within their lease that we should have a clause on ADR, because again, when tenants and landlords get themselves in this kind of a situation, then it becomes difficult even for them to rely on the lease as a way of coming up with a solution to that. So basically, ADR becomes in, okay, let me say, and of course mediation at the same time, because just as I've said before, the issue that we've had within our sector is because people don't understand the law.
Mm-hmm. But is that not part of your function to ensure that they understand the law? I mean, if I live and my living in someone's house is governed by certain rules and regulations,
I have to learn the law of the
yes,
land.
and if you are the appointed mediator, should this not take a pivotal role in what you do?
Yeah, but we see, like within our members, maybe probably what we do within our members, so we do give them materials based on the understanding of the tenancy laws and how they're supposed to operate them. Themselves.
But is that really enough?
It's not really enough, but at least to some extent, it has actually helped. Some of our members in a way that through that document they are able to manage themselves in terms of conflict resolution within
tenants.
Their tenants.
Tend to also group themselves into some sort of loose association.
Yes,
as do landlords. So when you talk about landlords and tenants, do you meet with these representatives at any given point in time? Or do you have scheduled meetings, whether it's quarterly, whether it's monthly? Do you have any such scheduled meetings?
Okay. We've not had scheduled meeting for tenants and landlords, basically. Just like as I've said before, maybe what we do, we have a communication system that we do communicate to them through online. And of course, we get to have most of our issues or maybe resolutions sorted out within such kind of parameters. But, and again, I always say, like, for every person who is a tenant or a landlord is our member. It's only that some have not activated themselves. So basically, as we move forward, we're looking into a situation whereby now, I think, because we never expected ourselves to be in this kind of a situation, but then this gives us a very big challenge moving forward, that we have to make some of these problems that we get ourselves into, get a solution for that. And of course, involving the government on the same, because without that, then again, it's just going to be a mirage in terms of trying to bring some sanity within the sector.
So you have your work cut out for you, as I hear you saying. Ben Liyai, Secretary General of the Landlords and Tenants Association. We've heard what you've said. I mean, you've got a lot of work that you're still doing in terms of trying to bring the tenants and landlords together. But as I've heard you speaking, I've got to give my honest opinion here. I feel like this is an association that is just moribund. When I think about associations like yourselves and how they have addressed the plight of their members during this COVID. Kenya Bankers Association, we saw what happened. Kenya Association of Hotel Keepers and Caterers, we've spoken to them, we have heard what they've done. Kenya Association of Manufacturers, we see what they do. Kenya Flower Council, we see what they do. Kenya Association of Landlords and Tenants, we're basically not getting the answers. People are suffering. People are not able to get their income as landlords. People are not able to pay their rent as tenants. And I guess it's about time that such associations actually took up their job and they did what they are supposed to be doing, which is, if you need to lobby government, if you need to bring your membership together so that you can have a conversation that solves the issue on behalf of all their members. Broadcasting on Spice FM, as well as on our digital platforms, Spice FM, KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and on KTN Home. So we've heard from the gentleman who's the Secretary General of the Landlords and Tenants Association, and just by listening to him, basically I'm sort of feeling no wonder we are where we are.
Right. Well, it would seem that then it's no surprise then that cushioning for people who have lost their livelihoods, who are out of a job, who are on forced leave, and then are then thrown out of their homes. There's no way for them to go to. There's no buttress. There's nothing in terms of a cushion for them to say, all right, this is where I would go in case somebody was to help me out. Everybody else, Eric has listed them on his 10 fingers of the different people who went to government asking for some kind of relief or reprieve.
And you're such a polite person.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying, okay, I'll take it. Thanks.
No, you're really polite. I mean, when you claim to be an association whose main function is that of an arbiter or an arbitrator, and there is no evidence whatsoever of even you communicating to other party effectively, so that this communication or this arbitration that you purport to actually represent takes place. You see, when you talk about lobbying, it's not calling Harambe or a Kamkunji. There are people within government who are responsible for certain things.
Yep.
You find a way of ensuring that such people are communicated to. Tenants have their association. Landlords have their associations. And within estates. So, how difficult can it be to actually get to find out who these groupings are and how to communicate with
the
them?
residents associations, because there are very many residents associations around the country.
They are, and
they
they
even
don't
have
to
an
communicate.
umbrella body.
Yes.
The Kenya Association of Residents Associations.
Yes, and they're the ones who talk to their fellow tenants.
Which brings me still to the issue, no wonder we're where we are.
Yeah.
Because none of them, not even Kara, speaks about the issues that are affecting their members. The associations, well, you could say that maybe Kara and the neighborhood associations look at everything else, the plight, the social plight, the security. But when it comes to issues of, financial distress, this is where some of these associations should now be emerging and coming out and taking leadership and saying we've got to play an advocacy role. When you don't see associations playing an advocacy role, you wonder, so why form them in the first place? What's the point of going to institute an association and all you'll do is come out and speak on behalf of yourself because you've not even consulted your membership to come up with a common position and say, this is the position we want to take?
So my mind still goes back to the easily thousands of people who have been thrown out or who face the risk of being thrown out over the next couple of months by virtue of the fact that they're no longer able to pay moving forward, or they're not able to cover their arrears. And I go to them right now because things, as usual, are going to get worse before they get better. Those who've been thrown out don't know what they're going to do. Those who may be on their last penny then don't know what they're going to do moving forward in terms of paying rent. A relief for this group of people has not been sought. It has not been sought. The only relief that we're looking at is maybe if you were paying a loan, if you're paying a mortgage of some sort, which then again we're looking at a very minute percentage of the general population. Maybe they get some reprieve because then maybe you don't have to pay your loan right now. You can look at it and doing that later. But then we're looking at a very dire situation in terms of what is going to happen to people. Where will they go? Shack up with relatives, board with a few people now for the foreseeable future. But that's what we're going to be looking at. And we're going to have to accept that. Save people going up country and staying in their rural homes, we are going to see a situation where more and more people will be kicked out because there's no relief. There's no relief that has been sought for them. There's no buttress that has been made on their behalf. There's nothing that's happening in terms of that. And if we're basic human right.
But do we need to have associations to address this issue?
There's no point of having associations
a
to address
thing. I mean, you can see.
There's no point having associations
Everybody
to address this issue if
country
they're not
falls
doing
in
anything
either
anyway.
one of these three categories. You're either a homeowner, or a tenant, or an investor landlord, or you're all three. You fall somewhere within these categories. Everybody, including those in government. So this is not a conversation that really needs to have, somebody to bring the plight of landlords or tenants.
It doesn't need an association. It doesn't need an association. If we're looking at now issues of lobbying towards government, if we're looking at issues of asking for relief at the feet of government, you don't need an association to do that.
My friend, even people who live in establishments or in structures that are owned by government, even they have an association there. There is no place where people live in groupings where you do not have a representative number of people within there. People who can go and champion their cause.
But we're saying in this case, the cause is not being championed.
But
No.
do we even need associations to speak about something as obvious as this?
Actually, I am actually.
It's like
agreeing-
saying we need to have a food eaters association because people are going hungry.
Eric, my point exactly. I'm saying the association is not necessary.
It really isn't, because the reason
The
for which it was
tenants
put together
already
is not
understand
coming
what they
through.
need to do. They actually do not need someone. They live there. They're the ones who have those problems. They understand. If this association was telling me that they're strengthening these people, and they could show exactly how it is that they're strengthening the tenants, the existing tenants association, to be able to take care of their membership, who are actually the people who live. And by the way, these people who form part of this tenancy area, they live in those estates.
Of course they do. Of course they do. Let's go to the phone lines. We're seeing people calling in. Phone lines are really beaming. 0719012600. Aluochi Mbakasi, good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for taking my call. So first of all, I want to thank you for the hard questions you're giving that guy towards the last minute. I mean, I'm surprised he's not yet back because I was waiting for many more answers. I mean, this is the first time I've heard of such an association. I mean, they can't be blind. I mean, I love the fact that you guys said, I mean, every day you open up the news, the newspapers, one of the things that people are crying about is tenancy, not being able to afford to pay their rent, and then to add on top of that, not being able to travel, maybe to go to shags.
Yeah.
It's just fortunate that the borders were opened recently. So many people are running away just to go to shags because they couldn't survive here. I mean, that association to me is just, I don't know. For me, it's a false association, because why is this the first time that, I mean, someone like me is hearing about it? And yet you hear they have about 10,000 tenants, 16,000 landlords. I mean, that's just, for me, it feels like an organization that's just trying to get funds or something. I mean, where is the advocacy for tenants? So, I mean...
Aluoch, we're also moving the conversation further and saying the plight of tenants, the plight of landlords is basically, we're talking about the plight of Kenyans. Every Kenyan lives in a house. Either they own that house, or they have rented out that house, or they also are doing both of those and they have another investment somewhere which they collect rent from. So must we be getting a conversation that's coming from the bottom up? Should this be something that the government already sees from data that it's receiving?
That's actually a very good point, because even, I mean, personally as a tenant, I mean, the government, I mean, the president or whatever might have said that banks can give landlords a waiver on their loans, but then that hasn't really trickled down to everybody. How are they ensuring that this is a directive that has really been taken? I mean, many people are really, really suffering. And that's why when I saw an association like that, that's where they come in. They're there to make sure that such things are actually, you know, people are accountable. Landlords are accountable, because there are so many who, they don't care. They can't even reduce, not even a fifth of the rent, nothing, not even 10%. Not even maybe garbage. Just don't pay the garbage this month. Nothing. Nothing. Not even electricity, water, something.
Yeah.
For some of us, yeah.
Thank you. Let's hear from Gideon.
That really needs to continue.
We shall continue with this. Gideon Mwiti, good morning.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Honorable Gideon Mwiti there. Now, associations in Kenya start in the long footing. An association in the estate should be known by the chief. He should even be a member to represent the government in that association. A representative from the MCA of the area, and probably somebody from the MP's office. So that whatever decisions and the recommendations they do are from stakeholders. Because the government is also a stakeholder in the lives of the people in various associations. But then when an association takes up and says we are an association, who is the representative of the government in that association? That's why we have the DOs, that's why we have the deputy county commissioners who should be involved. So that if like now they can petition the government to chip in and probably lower the rents, it is something that has been discussed and accepted where the government is represented.
So you're saying that these associations can actually be in a position to lobby to government?
Yes.
You're saying that these associations can actually be in a position to lobby to government on behalf of the individuals that they represent?
Yes, that is possible. That's why we have a chief. That's why we have a deputy county commissioner. They should be knowing what kind of associations are in various setups. So that the association is not a runaway institution, talking probably to the press, writing letters. It should be an association that can be engaged from where it is operating from, through the office of the MP, through the office of the Deputy County Commissioner. Then, if the matter can be taken up even to Parliament, it is easy because it is documented.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
That's what I'm saying, sir. And thank you. This is a very nice program that you have. I've been watching it, and I'm sure it will be very informative to the communities in this country. And congratulations for coming up with this.
Asante sana, Honorable Gideon Waiti. The conversation continues 0719-012-600 if you'd like to join in. This is Spice FM. This show is The Situation Room. In the room, we have Eric Latif, Nduoko, and C.T. Muga. We are discussing the plight of tenants and landlords, and we have to continue putting them together. Because, yes, tenants are not able to pay rent. Landlords who depend on this rent are not able to earn a living from their properties, their investments. So what is it that needs to happen to lobby them? We've been discussing in the last a couple of minutes. We had the Secretary General of the Landlords and Tenants Association, Ben Liyai, who was in the studio, and the question that we're asking him is what the role of the association is, and it didn't become very clear.
Not even role, the effect.
And the effect so far.
Yes, because you're an association that represents landlords and tenants. Surely there must be some feather in your cap. You must say,
this is what we've achieved.
Since 2013.
This is what we have done. We had this issue in this area, and this is what we did in terms of resolution. This is what we did in terms of
arbitration.
Yes, and all that.
Or even awareness creation, if you actually want to say that you focused on awareness creation. Before we came in, there was this number of people who ended up in court because of not understanding their position in the tenancy agreements. But we've reduced that because we've created more awareness. We're not getting any of that.
You know what is interesting? This understanding between tenants, as I said, even when it is property that is owned by the government, even if it is owned by private individuals, low end, high end, middle end, tenants have a tendency of getting together. Even if they are homeowners and they live within a gated community, they tend to have some sort of understanding among themselves.
It's neighborhood.
Yes. Sometimes it has to do with garbage collection. It has to do with security. But they do have some understanding among themselves.
So how would we harness that then to have a unified voice that speaks on behalf of?
I was rather hoping when I heard that there was this sort of association, that this association would be working with such groups. Because then, whatever you are doing is informed. There's clarity. The people who live there, they are the ones who know what's happening. They tell you. So you are taking forward to the tenants or to the landlords association a specific issue that has been brought to your attention.
And it goes across the board, because what are we talking about now? We're talking about reprieve. We're talking about a reduction in rent rates, not for eternity, but for a particular period in time. And I would expect that that's what you have institutions or organizations in those positions actually doing. Can you negotiate on somebody's behalf? Because it would be very difficult for a number of individuals to then go to landlords who clearly have the power to be able to say, okay, can we do this instead? Can we get a reprieve for a month? And on the other hand, for landlords as well, is it possible then for you to pay, 50% of what you used to pay before, so that I can remain afloat and so that you don't have to suffer? But if an association then is not carrying any of this whatsoever, then it might as well not exist.
I've seen the functions of some of these associations.
Pause City. Let's hear from Raymond in Langata. Good morning, Raymond.
Good morning, Eric. I listened keenly to your conversation with that Secretary General.
Yes.
And I even doubt whether such an association exists, because first he said that they've been in existence for years. And he also again says that they have not been able to meet because of COVID. And the first time that I'm hearing that this association exists, and I've not heard them taking any action on landlords. First, it's like having an association of employers and workers. And then how do you have such kind of organization first? And for me, I doubt even such organization exists. And I think government should just come in and intervene for tenants who are not able to pay for rent, and also negotiate with them about those landlords who are not able to pay loans. Such kind of an organization cannot even be able to help because they have no history. I even doubt of their membership.
You have very many doubts about them, Raymond. Thank you very much for calling in. 0719-012-600. That's the number to call. We're having the conversation about the plight of landlords, the plight of tenants, and the calls are coming in. This is Solomon in Mombasa. Good morning, Solomon.
Good morning. Yes, my contribution will be.
Yes.
We have a problem in this whole business of real estate because you don't have a body that regulates. You can have as many associations that you have, but as long as there is nobody that is regulating the code of conduct, the tenants and everything, we'll have chaos. I'll give you an example. Look at the fuel industry. It's well regulated. You have prices in Mombasa, Nairobi, Nakuru, Kisumu.
Yep.
So you have and the prices change every now and then. So if the landlords have such a body that regulates, because rent is different in this kind of setups, a GI in Mombasa is all over, it's different. So they're able to regulate and have strict laws in such a way that even the government can able to put an input on it.
Okay. So calling for regulation of the sector.
Yeah, because you see, the association, these associations are there to push for tenants to have to pay on time.
Yep.
And maybe pay the penalties. But what are the rights for the tenants? Do I get enough security, water, electricity? Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Lighting for the house.
Get your point. Thank you very much, Solomon. Boniface in Ukunda.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for this particular program. I enjoy watching it every day, enlightening Kenyans.
Asante sana.
Yes, so I have a contribution. I think it's quite an interesting discussion. And I will say thanks so much. I never knew such an association exists. The one that protects or lobbies for tenants' issues. That's the first time I'm hearing of it. So I will say as regards to COVID-19 pandemic, it has to start from the government. So the government has, first of all, to cushion the landlords, because we realize that these houses are done using probably loan facilities. So it has to start from the government, cushioning the landlords, probably lowering the interest rates and giving them some better monetary terms. And then from there, we need to have now these associations for tenants coming in now so strongly to create awareness that the government has done this and that. And we expect that cushioning from the government to flow down to the tenants. So it can only be realized when we have awareness that government has cushioned the landlords against interest rates, and it has to flow down to the tenants who are living in these facilities. Absolutely.
Thank you, Boniface. Daniel in Mombasa, good morning.
Morning to you. Hi, Eric.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Good. Plight of tenants and landlords.
I'm very well, thank you.
Fine.
I think we have an issue with or maybe connection between the landlords and the tenants.
Yeah.
One, where I live, I have two homes in Nairobi and Mombasa. In Nairobi, I live in government houses, and currently they are saying that they're increasing their rent starting January. And if you don't if you don't sign the lease, they'll kick you out. And these are government institutions where they rent out their houses. So it's a big issue whereby even the government does not know even the same association the guy was talking about. So like the previous caller who has said, the government has to be in this association so that they can understand also what is going on. Otherwise, if the government is not involved, it will be, I don't think it will add any value at all.
Good point.
That's my position.
Thank
if
you.
the government houses are being increased. So that means even the government does not understand what is going on the ground.
Or well, okay, that's right. Doesn't understand or doesn't know.
It doesn't has absolutely
Has no
clue.
idea.
Daniel, thank you
Yes.
very much for your contribution. Peter in Kilifi.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good
morning.
morning.
Yeah, I'd just like to draw my attention to the kind of people we have in Kenya. I mean, we've seen that there have been quite a few landlords who have gone ahead and reduced the rent for their tenants. But it speaks to the moral, the moral in our society, whereby these people have been with their tenants for so long, and they know the suffering the people are undergoing at this point, but they still want somebody with a big stick to tell them what to do. Charity does not begin. You don't need to be told about being, nice to somebody else. Yes, charitable, exactly. So what you have to do is we are impelled by our inner character to help out to somebody in need. The landlords we have here, I mean, it's almost as if they are inhuman, because you see, we can draw inference from some communities here in Kenya, like the Somalis or the Indians. They help each other out. They live. You don't see Somalis or Indians going around begging in town or all that, because they form a community that helps one another. Why don't we, as Kenyans, I don't need the government to tell me to help somebody who I know is in deep trouble. That is something that should come from the inner person, from the landlords themselves.
Yeah.
There's no need for someone to be told.
I do agree that some of the behavior that we have seen from some landlords in the manner in which they've kicked people out, has been, far less than palatable. People have been locked in. Also, all manner of things have been done to people. However, if we're looking at the other side of things, a landlord who is depending upon this rent for his or her own survival, then where would that conversation go? What needs to happen? Do you take a reduction? Do you say for the next 12 months don't? Do you take a loan? We would also look on that side of it and say, okay, so then in terms of their livelihood and sustenance, where are they supposed to get it from?
Essentially, you may be putting them in a position where they're subsidizing their tenants.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we know that the government has taken some measures. For example, when the government negotiated with the banks in terms of asking the banks to pass on some reprieve to the people who have borrowed from them. If you are a landlord and you have some debt with the banks, then you can also go and negotiate. So there's already that kind of conversation that should land at your doorstep somewhere. So it's about time that these organizations came out to speak. It's about time that landlords came out to also express themselves, because you see they're being passed on as people who are just completely
unscrupulous.
Yes, unscrupulous.
But the question you'd like to ask is, when we hear these cases, do they comprise a minority or a majority? I don't think it's a majority.
Of people who are being mistreated.
No, the symbiotic relationship that tenants have with their landlords is such that the landlords understand very, very clearly
who is living in their homes.
They understand exactly what role the tenants play in their lives and livelihoods.